In an actual game week, we had a good weekend. We practiced Saturday morning, and then last night, Saturday, just getting through the UAB game, and then we did get had about an hour last night to get slightly ahead on Louisville. Again, just reviewing the film from the UAB game, we thought that was really proud of the effort, the intensity. I mean, all the things we really asked for our guys. The attitude. I know coaches say these things all the time, but especially in the stadium with the reduced fans, and just I thought the energy on the bench, even when things weren't going great in the first quarter, or when UAB responded with a touchdown drive in the third quarter, our guys were they were eager to get back out there and make things happen. A ton of technique execution mistakes that are not unusual for an opening game of the season. Just things that you got to get in the big stadium under the lights against an opponent, and those things will be there. And I think the players see that. And I think that's been we've had a really good attitude this weekend of understanding that we can certainly be proud of the victory. We learned on Saturday how hard it is to win a football game. We know that. All you have to do is look around college football. But now to be the team that we want to be, we've got to clean up some of these errors and continue to try to grow and evolve as a football team. Obviously, going on the road to Louisville is they were predicted to be the second best team in the Atlantic before we all lumped up into one big pile. If you were playing fantasy football in the ACC, they're a combination of quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Right up there at the top three. I mean, them, Clemson, North Carolina, I would think would be the top three in terms of just skill positions, explosion on offense. They're probably the best outside zone running team in America. But the biggest difference from watching them on Saturday night is their defense has made a great transformation. You can see year two in being in a system for the first time. I think it's 5 years. It's the first time that Louisville's had a defensive coordinator, the same defense coordinator in back-to-back years. Their kids are a lot more confident, playing very aggressively. They're much more multiple than they were a year ago. They tackled outstanding for an opener. And again, very much like the UAB Central Arkansas game, the score was a little bit misleading because Western Kentucky really benefited from some really beneficial field position. So our guys will be very excited to play Louisville on a Saturday night, college game day. Here we go, week one in the conference.
The depth chart came out, and you got Ja'Kai Clark there on the first team. Can you speak on maybe Traore, how he played, and maybe what you saw from Clark in camp? And then also Corey Gaynor was named ACC Player of the Week for offensive line. If you could speak on him, maybe how he looked to you.
Yeah, I thought the entire offensive line played very well. I was proud of their effort, and to go out and have 300 yards rushing by the end of the third quarter is quite a feat. Traore didn't play poorly. Ja'Kai Clark is a guy that we've known is a starter quality player. We felt like we were deeper this year on the offensive line than we were a year ago, and just as reviewing the film with the offense staff, we just felt that that Ja'Kai would maybe settle in a little better at left guard, but I think you'll continue to see us go past 5 deep, 6, 7, 8 guys be able to go in there.
Hey, Coach, 2 questions for you. One, obviously, you always get bumps and bruises that first game. Wondering if there are any guys, particularly Cam Harris. I know he got hit low there at the end of the third quarter. How his leg's doing, and then also, you're going on the road for the first time, obviously during a pandemic. Just the differences in traveling, what that's going to be like for you guys compared to maybe last year. What kind of things you're going to change with that?
Yeah, Cam's fine, good to go. Practice this weekend. We really came out pretty healthy from game one, so that was great to see. In terms of traveling on the road, some of the things I don't even know yet, but will be different. But there are certainly going to be differences. Obviously, the way we space out on the buses, extra buses, the way that we space out on the airplane, everybody in mass the entire time. So, for example, you don't serve food on an airplane anymore. We don't serve food on the bus. So even like after a game, everybody would normally have their snack on the bus as you're driving to the stadium. That won't be the case this year. You've got to eat at the stadium before you go. So just all the little things like that. I think there's some different things in terms of just, checking in with the airline, all that type of deal. But it just, hey, listen, it is what it is. At some point, it's going to be 7:30 Saturday night. We'll go play a football game.
Hey, Manny, how are you? I got a couple quick questions. First, now that you've gone through opening week and played UAB, how much more do you feel that maybe you got out of that game in the sense of playing, you know, a little higher caliber opponent than say like a FAMU or a Bethune, or not to diminish any individual school or Wagner, or, you know, just want to, you know, that you actually had a real game, you were tested, you had to respond in the third quarter. How much do you feel you got out of that? And how much better will that make you going on the road this week to Louisville? And then my second question would be, with game day, with an ABC primetime audience, you know, the program's back on the big stage, so to speak. How much does that mean to you and to the program in trying to, you know, restore respectability, respect, you know, whatever you want to call it?
The first part of your question, I mean, there's tremendous value in beating UAB. I mean, I don't know if anybody believed me, but I kept saying before we played them that they're a really, really good football team, and they have really good football players. And watching them in person, the running back's a really good player. The wide receiver is a really good player. Their offensive line did a really nice job. Defensively, I mean, there will be defenses we play this year that aren't as good as their defense. They won't lose many more games this year. But to your point, just getting that adversity, getting that challenge. Look at college football on Saturday, right? I mean, there's not as many these games. Sometimes we call upsets. Sometimes they're not as much of an upset as we think they are. So our guys learned a lot. They were certainly tested, and I think we will be better for that going into game 2. Now, in terms of everything you're saying surrounding the game, you know, that's exciting. I mean, our guys come to Miami to be in those type of atmospheres in terms of, I know the fans won't all be there, but in terms of game day and whatnot. But I think you mentioned something about, you know, prestige and these type of things. As you know, that's always a moving target. You know, I mean, what's important this week, there's something more important than the following week. So the focus still has to be on playing a football game against Louisville's football team. And, you know, and all the sideshow stuff really won't matter once we get to kickoff.
So far in the league, we've seen North Carolina State have to ask for a postponement with its game against Virginia Tech, and then Virginia Tech have to turn around and ask for a postponement of its game against UVA. Among the coaches, is there a certain amount of empathy just to think, you know, the shoe could easily be on the other foot?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think the schedule was built this way with some flexibility. And let's use Major League Baseball as an example. You know, I mean, obviously down here we saw that the Marlins had to sort of take a week or so off, and you've seen some other teams do it, but you know, they have found a way. They've been able to replace the games, and we're heading towards the end of a baseball season. So everyone knew that 2020 was not going to be all smooth sailing, and there'd be some people taken out of their comfort zone. And as I mention it on this every week, as we tell our players every week, we are only as good as our next test. And that's why we have to continue to be diligent in all of our actions.
Are you traveling the day before the game still?
We are, yes. It's just for being down here in Miami, these trips are just too far for us to go on the day.
Right, exactly. So what kind of extra precautions do you need to take at your hotel? What all goes into that protocol?
Certainly, again, just keeping our players around our players. No different than we had. You know, we were in a home hotel last week, right? So hotel is a hotel is a hotel. But just making sure that we don't intermix with other people that are in the hotel. You know, that we could sort of keep our, you know, the closest thing we can create to an actual bubble is really in the 24 to 36 hours before kickoff. And so we had a little bit of experience with that in our home hotel last week.
And he wanted to ask you about the freshman backs, just being their first game. How do you feel like they handled the moment of their first game, and how'd they do with the little things like pass pro and that kind of stuff?
I thought they did a really nice job. I mean, it was great to see their explosive runs, but, you know, maybe my favorite runs of both guys. Actually, you know, Jalen Knighton's first run is inside zone, and the defensive end is sort of squatting on De'Eric, and he just takes the ball and just runs right through him. I think the guy was about 260, and Jalen ran right for him for about 4.5 yards. And that's when you get in the game, you run north-south, that sends a message. Then all of a sudden, when there's a crease in the defense, now you've got the skill and the ability to break out and make something explosive, which we've known all along of those guys. But But you got to prove as a young guy that you'll stick it in there. And I thought both guys ran downhill. I thought both guys ran very hard.
And I know Isaiah Walker was listed as unavailable for the week going into the UAB game. What's the status on him? Is there still a chance that he could play later this season?
That's possible still. Really with Isaiah, we're waiting for a medical clearance on Isaiah as well. And until we really know that, you got the eligibility thing, and you got a medical deal as well, and that's sort of where he's at right now. So we'll just we'll sort of go through both procedures and see what happens.
Hey Manny, wanted to know what you found out about your team, that final possession of the first half. I know it wasn't exactly 2-minute offense. I think you took over with 1 and change, but did you find out anything about blocking or De'Aaron King's decision making, anything along those lines?
Yeah, we called the timeout. We could have called the timeout after second down on defense, but there were 2 minutes left, and I thought with the way that our offense goes, I didn't think we did not need that much time to score. We got going. We called timeout to third down. They punted to us. We got going. We got across the 50, and then obviously went up with a negative play right there that took us out of scoring position. We called a really good call on third down, called the screen. Really just trying to get half of it back to get Jose out there to kick a field goal. We could have tried Jose on a field goal from that distance. I've got confidence in him to make that. But at 14-7, I felt that the risk of a long field goal with a potential block and a return with the way that our defense was playing against their offense, I didn't think that the 3 points was worth the risk of that. And I also felt that lining Derek up for a Hail Mary in that situation is not anything any defensive coach likes to see. So it was great to get in the game and get the dynamics. I thought our guys handled it smart, whether it was Cam Harris getting out of balance one time after a first down. I thought our procedure was pretty good.
And I think that UAB kind of brought pressure one time and fell back a lot of the time. I think I'm correct on that. But how did De'Aaron handle that? How did the offensive line handle that?
Sometimes good and sometimes okay. Normal for a game one. And again, I want to go back and again mention UAB played a different defense against us than they showed in game one or last year, coverage-wise and front-wise. So I thought our offensive line, I thought our offensive staff, and everybody on that side of the ball did a really nice job adjusting to some of the things that they did. But in terms of just staying in there, make sure we picked everybody up, make sure we're going through all the reads. I think sometimes, again, in a game one, that process can be sped up a little bit, just the techniques of how we run our routes, how we stem our routes. The finer details is what you normally get better at as the season goes on. And there was plenty of that to see on film that I think our guys know that they can improve.
Hey, Manny, a couple quick on De'Aaron. Number one, when you reviewed everything with the early part of the game, was it adrenaline first game? He mentioned, there was some overthrows, things like that. What was early on? What did you see was going on?
Yeah, I mean, all of that makes sense, right? And just remember, passing game is about timing. And that's why we really wanted to there's a couple things. We wanted to lean on this football team. And we wanted to run the football, okay? We wanted to go really fast on offense, and to do that, we weren't going to make it calculus, right? And have a bunch of stuff to try to think about and remember about. But you know how they always say your defense should be ahead of your offense? Well, your run game should be ahead of your passing game. And we didn't run the ball very well the last 3 games of last season. So we wanted to go out. We wanted to make a statement, be simple, have very limited missed assignments, which is what we did, and just get after somebody and play better than somebody else. So I think that happened. Now, again, like I said, the timing on some of the throws down the field or on some of the drop back type of stuff and progression and those type things, I know all of that will improve, but I'd have been more concerned if we had hit some of those plays down the field and not had the consistency on some of your more, bread and butter stuff.
And secondly, he's mentioned a few times in these calls, Manny, about the emotion of playing since losing his dad. Can you talk about that and seeing what you've seen in him in that emotion, and how this obviously a terrible thing for anyone to take, how it's kind of affected him over the past, I guess, 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to even imagine what he's going through. He doesn't let that affect anything he does when he's in this building or when he's at practice. The guy has literally never had a bad day. When he's come here. When I say bad day, I mean like just in terms of his attitude, his effort, his leadership ability. But it's still a lot to process. So I know that, I know the relationship that he had with his father, not just personally, but from a football standpoint, and his father mentored a lot of really good football players from the Houston area. So to be back in that stadium for the first time, I mean, all the emotions, just the emotions of 2020, I would feel unqualified to speak for somebody else and what they're dealing with at that time. But what I will say is that Derek has been nothing but fantastic in how he's handled himself, in front of this football team.
I know obviously every game is very tough, but you did beat a team, and I know they're a good team, but you were expected to win that game. Last year that didn't really that didn't happen though many times. Okay, you lost games, people assumed or whatever you were going to win. Is there, and you used to talk about the attitude of your team last year, everything was unexpected, I guess, but is there a difference that you sense in this year's team? Is it too early to tell? That's the first question I have.
Well, number one, yes, it's too early to tell. I'm not going to sit here and put our flag in the ground and say, we've sorted it out. What I will tell you is that we have made a real big point this year of saying winning is simple. It's just not easy. And I think it's important for the people inside this program to respect how difficult it is to win a football game, how difficult it is to win back-to-back football games, to win 3 in a row. I mean, just how difficult it is to win. This week we have to go win on the road against a conference opponent. And nothing we did a week ago matters. We told the team last night, it always starts back at 0, and there is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of preparation. I thought our guys did a really nice job of that a week ago, but if we don't prepare the same way this week, we'll get beaten. We'll get beat badly. So I think there's a respect of understanding that it's okay to accomplish hard things, and the hard things, they never get easier. In fact, they usually get harder. The more you win, usually the harder it gets to get more wins. So I think that might be the mentality on the inside. In terms of who's expected to win, I couldn't tell you who's supposed to win the game this week, and I would imagine Louisville thinks they are, and I would imagine Miami thinks that we are.
Manny, with respect to the passing game, last year against Louisville was probably your best passing game of the year, and I know it's a different offense, but is there anything you can take away from the success that you guys had last season, and maybe some of the advantages you had with your speed and skill going into this one?
What we need to take away from it is don't pay attention to it because it's last year. To your point, it's a very different offense than we were a year ago. They're a different defense than they were a year ago, somewhat schematically, but just, again, the temperament that we're playing with. So, again, last year's game, we executed very well in all 3 phases, but that doesn't really make any much of a difference a year ago. And I would imagine that they'll be highly motivated to show that they're not the same team that they were on that day. And guess what? We're highly motivated to show that we're not the same team we were on that day as well.